But my man is here. I see him in the background. Let me go to him. We are joined with the man himself, Dr. Jeff Rich. How you doing, Jeff? You doing okay tonight?
Very well, Jamal. How are you?
I am doing well. I am doing well. Dr. Jeff Rich, he's a historian, author, retired government official from Melbourne, Australia, with a PhD in history and over 3 decades of experience in government. He created the Burning Archive YouTube channel and Substack, where he shares his commentaries, book reviews, interviews on world history, culture, and politics. He has written 4 books, including 13 Ways of Looking at a Bureaucrat. Welcome to the show, Jeff. Thank you for joining me, man. I asked you, was there anything on your mind? And you sent me several topics, and all of these topics are fantastic. One of the interesting ones that I think I'm going to hit first, because I'm not going to linger on this one, but alt media reaction to the national security strategy by Trump. And this idea that they immediately fall back into Trump the peacemaker. Trump the peacemaker. Trump is really trying to make peace. Like, don't believe your it's like, see, here's this 28-point peace plan. Obviously, he's trying to make peace. He's trying to bring the world together. He's holding a dove in one hand and a lily in the other. And this was always what he wanted to be. Give me your take on that. I mean, obviously, I'm saying this with a huge amount of skepticism because I don't believe this to be true. But give me your thoughts on the way alt media has flipped back onto this.
Yeah, well, they've really had a bit of a pattern about this really for over a year, I think. And, you know, I saw Dimitri Lascaris speak on your show about this topic and also his wonderful monologue about it as well on his show. I think Dimitri's really, sort of correctly assessed the situation, that there are a lot of commentators, a lot of really respected commentators who've done amazing, great work, but who have a couple of very strong attitudes which are, sort of nationalist versus globalist, which are anti-migration, from a sort of European sort of nationalist perspective, and which are, sort of really believe in the sort of American, I guess, libertarian sort of dream, and hate the EU. And they are wanting to see those attitudes reflected in Trump's policy rather than seeing what Trump and the broader, the broader US government is actually doing. And as a result, they're sort of saying, "Oh yeah, I like what they're saying in the national security strategy, because they're giving Europe a whack." And then claiming that this is realist, but they're not seeing the absolutely just brutal ideological and very, the national security strategy strikes me as very much a internal domestic political campaign document as much as anything within America. It's sort of rallying the MAGA crowd, who are no doubt a bit disappointed after 12 months of failures, and sort of switching over from Russia as the bogeyman to Europe as the bogeyman really now. So yeah, I think it's been quite disappointing, really, including some like even people like Glenn Deason, I think. Sort of like wanting to have their initial hopes in Trump vindicated, wanting themselves not to be exposed as wishful thinkers and all that sort of thing. And I think some of their coverage has just been really poor. And it's actually something I did a video on the Duran actually back in February, because some of this overly positive valuation of Trump was evident even then.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no. You asked your question.
Well, no, I was just going to say, see, I was one of those people that was open.
Yeah.
Like, it was kind of like, okay, let's just see what happens. Like, meaning I don't believe one way or the other. The guy runs saying he's going to end the war, and he does so for the entire election, right? And he uses it as a political weapon. And at the point where Biden, where they shut down the radio station, and you're like, all right, well, let's see what Trump does. Let's just see what happens. And then you get within 24 hours, and the war's not over with. Okay, well, there's a 24-hour idea. And then you get for 2 months, 3 months, 4 months. And then he puts out an absurd plan that is like, this is a dead letter. I mean, before even the 28-point plan, like the first plan that he put out was like, this is absurd. You can't be serious. He's not being serious right now. And at that point, it's like, okay, well, obviously he's not being serious. Okay, well, that should have been, if you had to wait that long, the turn where you realize whatever Trump wants to do, an American president can't accept the level of failure that he would need to accept to end this war. Meaning either he needs to walk just outright, like I'm done, I'm out, or any kind of deal would be on Russian terms. I don't think he can do it. I just don't think, and this idea of, I just hate seeing people die is nonsense. It's just nonsense. He doesn't care about that.
No. And look, really, anyone who took his comment that he could solve the war in 24 hours at all seriously, or even interpreted that as a serious reflection upon the situation, really needs to have a good hard look at themselves in terms of the quality of their analytical skills, because of course he's not going to be able to solve it in 24 hours. It's just a totally absurd comment. It's just pure ridiculous bluster, but people have just wanted to believe it. It was, it was so, in some ways that was evident even before he got into office. And then he gave his inauguration address, which was, dressed up in sort of manifest destiny rhetoric and, planting the stars and stripes on Mars and all this, we're going to conquer Greenland and conquer the Panama Canal. And Alexander Mercouris says, this is the greatest political speech since Oliver Cromwell. I can't believe it. There's an American Revolution happening.
None of those speeches were good. All of those speeches were like, he was a maniac in all of those speeches. It's like, it's outrageous. Exactly. Like the idea that you're saying you're going to take Greenland. I don't care what Greenland thinks. I don't care what Denmark thinks. That's pretty outrageous. Oh, we're going to take Panama. Okay, again, that's pretty outrageous. That's not a peace president. Like, and you could see it, like attacking Iran, going back on the Gaza deal. None of these things, attacking Yemen, none of these things are indicative of somebody who's just standing there trying to make peace. And this is nonsense. It's just propaganda. So
exactly. So so it's pretty bad. And I mean, I think Dmitry was pretty balanced and fair-minded in his assessment, and said it, that it was because they, there were aspects of Trump's agenda around business regulation and, the sort of crypto bro, sort of techno-libertarian types that had drawn these people in, and it didn't reflect a failure of analytical skills or potential compromise of interests, etc. I'm not so sure I'd be quite as generous as Dmitry in my assessment of it. But because I think the types of analytical failures that were evident in those kind of assessments of Trump have been there for a long time, and they keep happening. And this silly idea that somehow this is a realist policy it just exposes the thinking.
I
But I
I
probably
take
shouldn't
them
go
as
too far down that route, or
no, no,
we'll
you're
get into
fine.
legal
I was just
trouble.
gonna say, I take them as being honest actors. Like, well, I can't say all of them. I take Alexander McCurse as being an honest actor.
Yeah.
I think they're just wrong, if that makes sense. Like for example,
Yeah, I think
if when
so. I think so.
Alexander points out,
Yeah.
well, Europe still believes that Ukraine has a chance to win it, and Ukraine can do the like that. Europe is just unclear on the situation. I'm like, dude, why do you think that? I love, and by the way, love Alexander McCurse. So this is no shade
Mm,
on him.
mm,
I think from their point of view, as you point out, some of this is wishful thinking. And
mm,
some of this is, well, maybe a deal has to come about. Maybe they will get a deal. Maybe,
mm,
et cetera. Maybe Trump is
mm,
trying to get a deal. And by the way,
mm.
I do think Trump wants a deal. He just wants it on his terms, which I think is
Exactly.
absurd.
No, that's right.
Yeah.
He just wants to get out with no blame and as much loot as he can manage,
Yeah.
and move on to a different political sort of story, and also to to shift the political narrative within America from the the Democrat progressive Russia's the bogeyman to now Europe's the bogeyman, and to also sort of I guess perhaps and quite a lot of the Ukrainian press are talking about this too, that it's part of the sort of the revenge for the sort of Russiagate sort of saga as well, to sort of expose some of the involvement of the sort of Atlanticist crowd in the whole Ukraine situation. So
Yeah.
yeah.
There's, I would imagine part of the other reason to this is a blame game that's going to come up.
Yeah.
That inevitably will take place, and that everybody seems to be positioning for the blame game, where Europe seems to be like, hey, we were with them ride or die, but America pulled out, and Trump is
Yeah,
going to
exactly.
probably come up with his own narrative. Give me
Yeah,
a take on this. I
exactly.
mean, is this going to work? I suppose.
Well, look, I just think the situation is going to be so catastrophic ultimately in Ukraine that it's, I mean, people attempt to maneuver it, maneuver to blame. Europe's attempting to blame Trump, and Trump's attempting to blame Europe and Kiev. But I just can't see it as being ultimately controllable. And again, this is the thing with a lot of the alt media will say, the European leaders are just, about to lose their political careers. Their negotiation strategy is defined by saving their political skins and avoiding the embarrassment of this defeat in the war. But then they don't say the same thing about Donald Trump, because that's exactly what Donald Trump is doing as well.
Yeah.
So I do think that's a big factor. But I think the other big factor is the kind of war debt issue. I mean, I think a lot of the conflict and tension between Ukraine, Europe, and the US in terms of negotiating an acceptable terms of this, acceptable terms to end the war, is about who pays in the end. And the 28-point peace plan was everyone but the US pays, and everyone pays the US. It's sort of that was basically the plan. You steal Russian assets for us, and we'll take the profits from it. So I do think that is a very, very big factor. And so I think that is as much a factor in terms of the tensions between Europe and the US as the sort of political issues or the culture warrior issues or that sort of thing. Or a lack of realism. And the thing I really think, and I think John Helmer makes this point too, that's really wrong in a lot of the alt media's analysis of the various negotiation positions, is there's this meme of the childish Europeans, the selfish Europeans, the Europeans who, unless the Americans are there, will start fighting World War II again. All this sort of infantilization of the Europeans. And I just don't think it is a serious sort of kind of analysis. I mean, yes, they are involved in, awkward political posturing at the moment because they're in a very difficult position. They're sort of trying to make a silk purse out of a sow's ear to some degree. But they are being calculating political actors within their circumstances. And so you have to actually look at what they're trying to achieve within their circumstances, try and look at what is the difference between the public positioning and the private negotiations. And that sort of stuff has been, evident during the week. There's been talk about Maloney having a difficult heart-to-heart with Zelensky to say, look, it's over, Volodymyr. You're going to have to make some concessions. And presumably that is, perhaps that's one of Maloney's designated roles. And it also means you don't pick up the differences between the different European groups, which, so you've got Germany, Britain and France off on one angle, and then you have, the Orban and the Czechs and the Slovaks, and then you have Maloney, I think, playing a slightly different role in the sort of, no way I'm going to let Starmer and Macron get the kudos out of this, and is probably a little bit more congenial to giving Trump a win. And a bit more of a pragmatic compromiser, perhaps. So if you put aside the sort of stereotypes and the cliches and the sort of insult comedy, really, just calling Europeans European leaders children and things like that, I think you can actually pick up some different aspects to how the negotiations are going down. And they do seem to be, there seem to be significant developments really in the next couple of days. And I think it's going to be a bit of a tricky situation for the Russians as well, because they're going to be, it looks like Europe, US, Ukraine are again trying to maneuver Russia into being the gainsayers of a potential peace deal.
Yeah.
And things do seem to be approaching, because also what is, from the sounds of what's been reported as the potential deal to be discussed, it's really not adequate, I would have thought, from a Russian point of view.
A few points. Points. I feel like I have to defend Americans or Americans.
That's okay. I've got to bag America occasionally. It's part of the fun of the
No. I hit the States all the time, but it's in the context of the Europeans. One, Maloney could convince me of anything. If I was Zelensky, I would have ended the war the moment that she would have asked me, like, okay. The woman is gorgeous. Two, we didn't infantilize Europe. They infantilized themselves. The idea that Mark Rutte is calling Trump daddy is humiliating. We didn't do that. Nobody, like America, didn't say, hey, I need you to call me daddy. They did that. We didn't do that. And the situation that they find themselves is a situation of their own making. Nobody told them to destroy their economies for the dignity and, the benefit of America. They did that. Like, in fact, none of this is in Europe's best interest. That we blew up Nord Stream pipeline. And what was the response of the Europeans? Russia did it. All of them know that Joe Biden came out and overtly said, if Russia goes in, we will blow up their pipeline. We would stop their pipeline. The pipeline blows up and they're like, hey, man, we're unclear on how this happened or who did this. Those are European actions. I guess the point I'm trying to make is if there's any infantilization of Europeans, they infantilize themselves. They are playing that role. It's like my ex my ex used to say, "Don't treat me like a child," and it's like, dude.
Sorry, say what?
My ex used to say, like sometimes we get into a conversation and she'll say something like, "You're treating me like a child," and it's like, dude, you're acting like a child. It's like that's not my fault. Like if I'm explaining something to you, like if I'm if we are engaging each other in a way
Yeah.
where
Yeah,
one
yeah,
person takes a parental role, despite the fact that we're near the same age, that's
yeah,
not me intentionally trying to do that. That wasn't the way I worked with my ex-wife. That wasn't the way I worked with any of my exes, right?
yeah,
It's
yeah.
the relationship and the way that we engage with each other. I'm saying that is the way that the Europeans, that's the role that they've tucked themselves in, where they don't want to stand up on their own. They don't, the relationship with China is a really good example. It will be
Mm.
in Europeans' best interests to have a relationship with China. What did
Mm-hmm.
Macron do? Macron goes over to Beijing or China. He wasn't in Beijing. He was in a different part of Beijing. I mean, a different part of China. And comes back. And what's the first thing he does? Immediately bashes China the moment that he gets back on European soil.
Mm.
Who are they doing this for? The Dutch, when they turn around and take Syria. Who are they doing this for? I hope you get my point. I guess my thing is,
Yeah, no. Look, I agree with you, and I think there is a sense in which, but I think it's not about the European elites being children. It's the phenomenon of a decades-long process of the creation of sort of Euro-Atlantic elites, a sort of a network of Euro-Atlantic elites who are as much loyal to, if you like, the American empire as they are to their individual states, or at least are pursuing the interests of their individual states within, I guess, the framework of the sort of American empire. And I think, though, one of the risks of the sort of infantilized sort of argument, or the silly, senseless, mindless European sort of argument, is, I mean, I've just been tuning into some of the European media just over the last couple of days just to see how people have been responding to the whole NSS, sort of thing. And I wouldn't underestimate the extent to which people, it's sort of like being, slapped in the face and said, "Oh, okay." And there's a point at, to me, it's rather than acting like children, they're acting like a abused spouse, and at some point the abused spouse is going to say,
I'm out.
I'm leaving.
Yeah.
But
on
it takes a lot of, in those
abuse.
situations, it's a difficult process for that person to go through, and it's similarly.
Well, that's what I'm glad you brought this up,
Mm.
because I am curious on how do you think Europe is going to deal with the contempt, the seething, utter, overt, outright emancipatory contempt in that document towards Europe. I mean, they're talking about culture erasure.
Yeah.
He's making the argument
civilizational erasure.
Yeah, saying that they're weak, they're decaying. I mean, like, he is spared no criticism of Europe in this. How do you think they're going to respond to it? I mean, is this the stepwife that decides? Is this Tina who, claws at Ike in the limo? Or are they going to take this abuse and continue?
I don't think they are going to take the abuse, and apparently Mertz did a sort of television talking to the public sort of television show. I don't know what the word for that is, but like a vox pop type sort of thing. The other day, where he sort of expressed a little bit more spine, a little bit more independence. A lot of the commentary is also just saying, well, this is so outrageously wrong but we do need to sort of deal with it. So I think part of the way in which they're going to deal with it is just say, Well, if you actually believe this, you're a complete idiot. United States and America. And if you, I mean, and there's also quite a degree of reaction to the sort of, the sort of dog whistle racism of it all too. It's basically that sort of replacement theory. It's almost quite explicitly so. They say,
Right.
I think I've got if present trends continue, the continent will be unrecognizable. And they talk about, some of these countries becoming majority non-European, whatever that means. I guess we know what it means. So
Yeah.
I think there's going to be a pretty strong reaction to that. But I also suspect it may not be from the current crop of leaders as the next in line, if you like. So
I see.
the next generation of European leaders, the ones who are going to succeed Macron, and I don't mean like the AfD or Marine Le Pen or whatever, but because I just think those, a lot of people think somehow or other the AfD is going to save Germany, and they're just utterly deluded. But the next, sort of wave of political leaders who will come in 5 to 10 years will have seared into their political experience that the United States is utterly contemptuous, utterly untrustworthy, and Europe should, go about pursuing a far more independent economic, political, defence, sort of security, foreign policy as well.
Yeah.
And so it's a kind of experience that will have long-term consequences for both the attitudes and the sort of general orientation of people. So in some ways it might have a kind of a counterproductive effect of pushing Europe into a far more independent approach. So yeah, that's what I think.
There's an irony in that document also. I mean, that's assuming that the document is even a legit, that this is actionable. That's assuming it's actionable. This notion of wanting a stronger Europe means that by definition, you're losing control of Europe, which was the entire point of NATO. Like it's almost as if the document assumes that it can have both, that Europeans can be stronger, they can be more independent, etc. And yet we somehow maintain some level of control behind the scenes. I mean, because there's this really good clip by right here. Is this it? No, there's this really good clip by this admiral for NATO, and he points out right here, this one, national. What is this gentleman's name? You may have seen this clip. I'm going to play it for the audience, though. Come on. Okay, the clip doesn't necessarily want to show up. Damn it, Twitter. Let's try to reload this.
I mean, while it's loading, Jamal, I should also mention that, there's just some basic factual things that people should get straight about some of these comments about Europe as well. So that, it's talking about their migration policies. Let's play the clip. Yep. And I'll come back to that after you play the clip. Yeah.
Okay.
And so when we look at the rise of the Chinese military, what our goal in the joint force is to create multiple simultaneous dilemmas for all of the adversaries around the world, so that they are very cautious and concerned about doing something that would bring any sense of threat to the American people.
Now, this is a bit rich on so many counts, but from his point of view, well, we may be pulling back on some level in a sense of, let's say, direct engagement, this kind of Wolfowitz, where we can put American troops everywhere around the globe. But if we can push South Korea, Japan, Philippines, if we can push the Europeans in order to take a stronger stance towards Russia, we can push Israel to go after the Iranians or whatever other actors in the region we don't particularly like. And we will stand back and we will give assistance. So we want to have multiple prongs of threats, which is effectively what the document does say, right? Where it's like we want our allies to get more involved. There's a contradiction, though, for the European theater. If indeed you're pissing off Europe in this way, you're bashing them relentlessly, and you want them to be stronger, that seems that you would think mean less control. But correct me if I'm wrong on that, or do you see it that way?
Well, I think this is where the political, the sort of transatlantic political network, the political infiltration over decades sort of comes in, because they do have de facto imperial control of the political elites, of the military networks, of the security community. People talk about the security community, the intelligence services. And there's this great analyst, Nell Bonillo, who talks about the America having she describes it as a pointillistic, as in like a starry sky of points of light, empire of bases, and that it's conducting this strategy, a global strategy of, if you like, almost like permanent low intensity war across the world, a permanent attrition war. And when pressure mounts in one area, they push the button somewhere else. And we can see that situation where, pressure's mounted on Venezuela while it's been perhaps relieved on Taiwan. Pressures gets pushed in the Caucasus sometimes, and in Ukraine sometimes, and the Koreas sometimes, and all the rest of it. So I do think he's actually articulating the sort of basic NATO strategy, which is the American strategy of this sort of permanent attrition war. But ultimately, this is it's a impossible goal that they're pursuing. I mean, the national security strategy effectively is just re-expressing in different rhetoric the continued global domination of the world by the United States. The way they make it sound a little bit more, less, or a little bit more America first, if you like, to please those people who like that, is by saying that, the phrase they use is the US will not accept the rise of any power that can threaten its interests, and that it has interests all over the world. And so it is absolutely pursuing a very, very, very domineering sort of strategy, which I just don't know how much longer Europe's leaders can, intelligently and in their own interests really continue to play along with that in the longer term. And certainly some of the people in Europe probably think, let's just wait a couple of years. Trump's on his way out probably.
Yeah.
In a year's time, he'll be a lame duck. Which he probably will be a lame duck, except he'll probably be this sort of, like headless chook sort of lame duck.
Assuming they don't get Vance.
Hey?
Assuming they don't get JD Vance.
Yeah, well, yeah, and people are not very happy about that. But I mean, I can't, if Trump goes down, I frankly can't see Vance replacing, getting successfly replacing him, to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, why would you? So some people just want to wait him out, But I'm also hearing quite a few people across Europe sort of say, look, it doesn't matter who gets elected there. We've got to actually sort of start to stand up for our own interests. So it's not going to happen immediately, and they're going to have to get through the Ukraine war. But if they, again, if we look at how the negotiations have gone on the Ukraine war, Europe has been getting its way in many ways, hasn't it? Trump will make a lot of noise, but in the end, he does actually have to negotiate seriously with Europe. And if America does pull out, if there is an agreement, if this sort of thing is gone, I do wonder if that starts to sort of refocus some of the Europeans about just, fixing the incredible mess that they're about to inherit in Ukraine. But also perhaps, move towards a more viable security arrangement with Russia without the constant aggravation from America. I mean, that's my more optimistic angle, but yeah.
I suppose we will see. What time is it? Okay, we have a few minutes. You mentioned, is that right? Oh, good, we have time. You mentioned that events are about to take place very soon that you think are going to be significant in relation to, I guess, some kind of deal that is going to be put forward. I got to be honest with you. I don't think the Russians care. I don't know why they would care, to be honest. If you look at events that Seversk has just fallen, Pokrovsk has just fallen, Volchansk has just fallen. All of these places are falling back to back to back to back. The speed of the Russian advance is increasing. The only reason that the Trump administration is even having these dead letter deals is because they recognize, oh my God, the Ukrainian military is going to collapse, and it will be completely humiliating if it collapses on my watch. So whatever deals that the Europeans are talking to themselves. There's in the book Three Body, there's this element where Earth is talking to itself, saying, hey, this is what they want. This is what these people are believing. This is blah. And all of it was wrong. All of it was wrong. And that's what it makes me think of, right? When I think of the Europeans and Americans talking to each other, I always think of that scene in the book because they do it over and over and over again. And they just talk to themselves, and then they go to the Russians, and Russia's like, this is obviously unacceptable. I don't even know why you brought this to us. What do you think is going to take place, though?
Well, there has been a proposal sent to the US yesterday, apparently, and there's a proposal to meet on Saturday with EU and Trump and stuff.
I thought it was potential. Trump said
there's a planned meting.
Okay.
And I think Trump is. I mean, it seems to me that Trump, wants to deal before Christmas. First of all, he tried, before
Thanksgiving,
July or something, and then Thanksgiving. Now he's going for Christmas. But apparently, in Le Monde, the French newspaper, the advisor Podolyak. I can't quite remember what his role in the Ukrainian government is, but he said there's been an agreement to withdraw Ukraine forces from Donbass, and that this is the nature of the proposal. And the Europeans have agreed to this. So there is a significant move, but I would be pretty cautious about whether it's a bit of a bait and switch kind of thing. It's sort of, we'll do this, but it will be so complicated. And in a way, it's also just a way to bring in European and American peacekeeping forces to monitor the sort of withdrawal of the troops. But I agree. But I think the dilemma for Russia is the way they're currently doing the negotiation processes, very dependent on the US, and they have to keep the US sort of on the hook somehow, so that they can't just say, "Go away, Donald." We'll just keep fighting. So I wonder whether there might be some sort of positive news, but the detail of what they're talking about sounds to me not all that different, a little bit modified, but not all that different from the initial 28-point peace plan.
Right.
And it does seem to reflect very much, particularly US perspectives. It's more. I mean, they've sort of taken out some of the EU stuff, but it largely reflects the same sort of wit coffee sort of US. Let's do a deal with the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant, and all these wonderful new deals that America and Russia can do. So I think it might be a bit of a lure for Russia to agree to something, but I don't know if it's necessarily a very wise thing for them to do. But then if they do say no, they're going to have to, I guess, manage the response of the Americans. And so
dead letter.
Yeah.
Dead
I
letter.
agree. Yeah.
Dead
So
letter.
this is where I really think, and maybe I don't know whether this is their calculations. Maybe they're just going to have to say, well, Donald, you're going to have to learn from this that you're going to have to start doing things differently, because if you keep coming up with unacceptable proposals, we will continue to push ahead. And how firm is the political authority now within Ukraine after the loss of Seversk and the diplomatic retreats, the democratic sort of deficit, all the other problems. I really think there's more possibility of a really, really difficult winter for Ukraine coming ahead, which will be very embarrassing for the US. But it will also be hard, I think, for Russia to manage diplomatically. I mean, it's not. I mean, they can just push their troops through, but that's if they're pushing their troops through a social and humanitarian disaster. It could be quite difficult for them to manage diplomatically, I would think. So I think it's quite a delicate strategic calculus, perhaps, for them about what the benefits of military gains versus political gains versus diplomatic gains, and it might just be a thing of, well, let's just keep the talks rolling, but let's not rush it. And let's keep the Americans on the hook, help the Americans bring the Europeans and the Ukrainians, to their senses, but not agree to anything prematurely.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would think of it differently. I think it's the Americans that are trying to keep the Russians on the hook. I mean, I think the Russians want a deal, but it can't be like Minsk 1 and 2. It can't be another Istanbul agreements, and meaning they burn all credibility. And honestly, the Europeans have no credibility in this process. I don't even know why the Russians would even care about what they think at this point. I think Lavrov has even said as much. So it's like it's yes, ostensibly they will want a deal, but the tanks are going to keep rolling. The military operation is going to keep rolling. They're going to want every I dotted, every T crossed, and those things are going to keep going as it takes place because it allows pressure and more pressure. Keep in mind, from the Russian point of view, the only reason they're sitting in negotiations right now is because of what is happening on the battlefield. What's the context of the ground is shaping the negotiations. They're not going to change it. I don't think they're going to change it. And so, it may be humanitarian morass, but that's.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the thing is, what happens if there is a real, like a serious political crisis in Ukraine, and the government actually collapse, or if there really is a significant military collapse, it will create sort of a dynamic instability. I agree. I just think, it's just going to be tricky to see how it sort of plays out. But yeah, tough.
It will be a mess. Dr.
It's going to be a
Jeff,
tragic
thank you for this,
mess.
Man. Always appreciate your conversations. Always appreciate you. I would say it's already a catastrophe, but yeah, it can get worse. It can always get worse. Dr. Jeff Rich, he's a historian, author, retired government official from Melbourne, Australia. He has a PhD in history with over 30 years of experience in government. He created the Burning Archive YouTube channel and Substack, where he shares commentaries, book reviews, and interviews on world history, culture, and politics. He has written 4 books, including 13 Ways of Looking at a Bureaucrat. Jeff, you have a great rest of your night, man. Thank you for this.
Thanks, Jamal. And thanks to everyone. I'll see you later.
Bye-bye. Be safe. All right.